Welcome back to the channel. We're on part 2 of our Speedster portion of our superpowers in virtual reality series. We already did a series on a flying super movement, super flying movement, and now we're doing a Speedster. The last episode was a bit too long for all that we accomplished. All we basically did was set up an FSM to move a player in VR. All right, and we're looking at it here on my screen. Very simple. So what we're doing this time now is we're going to get to the fun stuff, and that is going to be how we're going to do super speed. If you watched the previous episode, I mentioned we're not going to do just click a button and we're running faster. No, we click a button and then we have to use our body to use our superpower. So that's our goal. All right, so here we have our player. We have our movement FSM. That's all we have on it right now. So we're going to add a new FSM. And if you were around for the flying series, you remember we had a superpower toggle. So I don't remember what I called that FSM, but we're going to call this super movement toggle, and I'm going to call this Speedster like that. Okay. I don't know, state 1. I'll just call this weight toggle. Okay, because nothing's happening here. And so we need to go look in our Oculus section, see what's going to work for us. And all right, so we're going to use get touch button. And it's going to be on the left controller. What's nice about this button is it's really easy to know what it is. It's the thumbstick. All right, so primary thumbstick. I don't know if you can hear that. That little click when you push in the thumbstick. That's what we're doing on that. And we're going to send an event. I'm just going to call it toggle. Boink. I want to do the same thing if it's the right hand. All right. That way they can toggle their super speed. Dink, dink, either one. All right. So toggle. And now we're going to, I don't know, activate super speed. Works for me. So the first thing we want to do in this state is we want to disable our movement FSM. So we're going to look for an action called enable FSM. And it's on the same game object. So we just click this little dot and we can see movement, and we want to disable it. That's just by unchecking the enable box. And we're going to leave reset on exit checked, because when we leave this state, we're going to go back to the weight to toggle. And so we can re-enable the movement FSM. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to simple move again, like we did with our movement in the previous episode. So we're going to move the owner. We need to move forward. So right now we're just going to say forward. And our speed is going to be, let's just call it super speed. And in this case, I'm going to keep it at 0 because our speed is going to be determined by how fast we move our arms. Yeah, so that is the gist of what we're going to do with this. And then I'm just going to copy these two guys so that we can disable super speed. Boom. I'll go back. Just the basic logic. But we need a couple different pieces here. One, we need where's this forward direction coming from? And then we also need to calculate our super speed. So the easiest of those two is to figure out what our forward direction is. And our forward direction is going to be where we're looking. It's really important that we're using the controller simple move action, because if we use the controller move action and we chose our forward direction to be where we're looking, we would fly. But the controller simple move ignores the y-axis. So now I just need to get forward direction. I'm going to put it in here before the controller simple move. And I'm going to specify what I want the forward direction of. And I want it of the center eye anchor. Anytime you're dealing with the OVR camera rig, it's always the center eye anchor. That's your camera. Okay, you're going to be basing off that. And then we're going to store that as our forward vector, which we already created. And we're going to get that every frame, because we could be moving around. All right, so we have our forward direction. We know where we're moving, but we don't know how fast yet. So, and we can turn it off. So how are we going to figure out how fast we're going? We also need to think about how fast do we want to be our max speed? And we also want to think about how are we going to stop. And so I thought about this a lot, about what would be fun. And so one, we can always toggle and boom, we shut that off. But I also thought there could be some flexibility when running, because if we move our arms really fast, we can max out our super speed, but maybe we slow down our arms just a little bit. I don't know, like to hit a corner, and we're going to slow down a little bit. So how are we going to control our slowdown? Because what if you just stop moving your arms? Okay, you're still in your super movements toggle, but you stop moving your arms. How does the game know to slow down? So we're going to do a couple different things. One, we're going to let's clamp first. Float clamp. I'm going to move this above the simple move. And we want to clamp our super speed to where we don't go slower than 0 or in a negative direction. And because I've tested this for a while, the maximum I think I want to go is 30. Okay, it doesn't mean you will. And let's make sure we clamp this every frame. We're not just going to clamp it in one frame and then forget about it the rest. And the next thing I want to do is a float subtract. You may not have float subtract. I can't remember if I added this from the ecosystem, because it didn't used to come standard. So you would just do float add and then just put a minus sign. But there is a float subtract action, at least in mine. If you don't have it, then just use float add and add a minus sign. So I want to take my super speed and I want to subtract 10 per second. And because we're doing it per second, we want it to be doing it per second every frame. Okay, it's not going to subtract every single frame. It's still going to time itself to be per second, but that every frame means it does it constantly and it doesn't stop. That seems like we're slowing down a lot, but not really, because it's only subtracting you 10 per second. So it does feel pretty gradual based on my testing, but if you're doing this, you might decide to halt faster. Okay, so we are toggling our super speed. When we do that, we disable our normal movement FSM. We're getting the forward direction of our eye, and then we're subtracting our super speed by 10 every second. We're also making sure that it doesn't get below 0 while we're subtracting. We're also making sure that whatever creates our super speed doesn't go above 30. And when we do that, we're going to move. And if we want to turn off everything, we can do that by toggling those buttons again. All right, so how are we going to calculate our super speed? Don't be afraid of creating more FSMs. When I first started 2.5 years ago, however long it was with Playmaker, I had these really ridiculous, complicated FSMs. Make your FSMs simple. Make sure they all have their own job. Like, I could have put this super movement and made it a toggle from in here, and we could have done it, but the FSM would have gotten more and more and more complicated. So you want to break it up and keep it simple. So here we have our basic movement. Here we have our super movement, but we now need to calculate our super speed. And so we're going to be doing that based on the motion of our arms. So let's not complicate this super movement FSM, and let's just create a new FSM. In fact, I'm going to have two separate FSMs here. One to calculate my left hand moving, and one to calculate my right hand moving. Well, really my controller's moving. All right, so let's call this super speed calculator. I don't know. Call it left. All right, so in my start state, I want to set float to a value, not animator, float. Set float value. Because what's going to happen here is we're going to be getting that super speed variable from our super movement FSM. But on my start state, I always want to reset it to 0. Otherwise, I might disable the state, and then when I disable the super movement, when I re-enable it again, I'm already going that speed. So if in my start state, I'm going to reset super speed to 0. So to start out, okay, so we're going to be setting some things up in the start state, and then we're not going to come back to it. We're going to have an up state and a down state. But first, we need to figure out what state it's in now. So we're going to get touch position. Get our touch controller position. And this is our left. I put an L in this one, so this will be our left hand. So our left controller position. Store this as controller position. We shouldn't need to get that every frame. Maybe we do. Yeah, I think we do need to get every frame because it's not deciding what's if I'm like kind of midway, it's not gonna know what to do with it yet. So it's really looking for it to be way up here or way down here. All right, so I get its position, and now I'm going to. I don't want the whole vector 3. So you can see there's an x, y, and a z. I just want the y. So I'm gonna get vector 3 x, y, z. And the vector 3 I want to get is the controller position, and I just want to get the y. So we're just going to call this y. Let's get that every frame as well. And so now we're going to compare the float. And the float we are comparing is that y, because we want to know, is our controller up here or is our controller down? And so I already did some math here. I'll tell you how I did it. I basically had this set up. And I just looked at this Y value. I put on my headset and I just moved my controller up and down to see like what extremes I wanted. So if you're doing this, you might have different extremes. But I found like the points that I wanted, I'm going to use here. So my first one is going to be deciding my controller is up. So the float I'm going to compare it to is actually a minus 0.1. And so if it's greater than this, my controller is up. I'm going to check that every frame. But I need another compare. And this one is a minus 0.7. And if it's less than that, get rid of this. If it's less than that, then my controller is down. Okay, so there's our start state. And let's go ahead and if I hold down control and drag off of up, I'm now in state 2. And we're going to name this as our up state. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do down first. Right click, clear transition target, down. All right, so down, we're going to first do it all again. All right, so I'm going to come over here. I'm not going to reset it to 0, but I am going to get the touch controller position. Actually, let's just delete this. Let's take this state, because we're going to use a lot of these actions again. Copy, paste it. And I don't need this down transition, but I will use that up transition. I'm going to call this down. All right, so we don't need to reset this, so I'm just going to delete that. We are going to get the position. We're going to get the vector 3. I'm only going to keep one of these float compares because what these did in the first state was decided is my controller up or is my controller down. But I already know that my controller's down. So I'm going to delete the one where it's checking for down. And now I just have the one that's going up. And now I'm going to add a couple other things in here. So now I need to get what my current super speed is, which right now it's 0. Where is that speed stored? It's stored in the other FSM. So get FSM float. I'm not sure why I put my float. I did both those things, but then put float compare at the end. But I'm going to repeat what I did. Move that to bottom. So I'm going to get the FSM float. It's still in the same game object. So I'm going to use owner, but it's going to be the super movement toggle speedster, and it should be stored as super speed. And I'm going to save this also as super speed. All right. But now we're going to add to that. So let's say. And the reason I'm going to add to it is it starts at 0, and the more I move my arms, the faster I want, or the higher I want that float to be so that I move faster. All right, so we're going to do a float add now. So we're going to add to super speed. I'm going to just create a new variable called speed add. So if I want to change this, I can down the road, but for now, we're just going to call the speed add 10. So when you're testing, you can make it real easy to change this. But I don't really like that. You can change it by like putting it in as input. Now it's over here in the inspector. It makes it really easy for you to change that variable. But I'm just not going to for now. All right, so I'm adding 10. And we only need to add it once. You could, I guess, make it more gradual, but yeah, that wouldn't work. You can't. I'm not going to do every frame per second on this because I just want boom, add 10, add 10, add 10, add 10, add 10, add 10. All right, so it's just going to do it right away. And then I want to, once I've added it, I'm going to clamp it again. Even though the other FSM is going to be clamping it, I'm going to clamp it again here just to be safe. So float clamp. All right, super speed. Make sure it doesn't get below 0 or above 30. My num block keeps turning itself on and off. And then I'm going to go ahead and now set that. Set that float from the super movement toggle super speed. The one that we basically are copying that variable, adding to it, and then pasting it back in the other FSM where it was. All right, so we're just going to put super speed. And then we're going to float compare. All right. Now we'll get stuck in this state. Oh, this is the down state. We'll get stuck in this state if the player doesn't bring their controller all the way back up. And if we get stuck in that state, what's going to happen? Well, remember, this one is constantly subtracting 10. So eventually they'll slow down and stop. All right, if you don't pump your arms. Okay, so now this we'll take down to here, and then we'll copy paste. And we're going to call this one up. So now this one can go to up once it's in the up position. All this should be good. We shouldn't need to change any of this. The only thing we need to change is our float compare, which we're just going to steal the float compare over here from our start state. Go to the end, deleted, right click, paste actions after. And then, yeah, we'll right click and delete that up transition and then down. All right, so now what this should be doing is when we are in the super movement toggle, our super speed starts out as 0. And then whenever we are moving our left hand, we're adding 10 to it. Then we add 10. 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 And so we should hit 30 pretty quick. But keep in mind, it's also subtracting 10 every second. And so that's why I just really need to balance it a little bit. And you might balance it differently, but it's just steadily subtracting 10 every second. So you don't have to go too crazy to be running, but it does give you the chance to go slower if you need to. It's really nice. All right, so we did the left hand. So we're just going to copy this and paste component as new. And we're going to call this one R for right. So now let's come over here and go to right. And we just have to change a couple things. So get touch controller. We want the right controller. And come over here. Get touch controller. Right. And then get touch controller. Right. All right. So now both hands. So this is actually adding 20. Adding 20 because this is doing 10 and this one's doing 10. It works. You'd think that, well, boy, you're gonna hit your max speed too fast. It felt good for me. Might not feel good for you. You might change it to something else, but this worked out for me. I liked this balance. But we're not done. All right. So we're gonna start out with both of these disabled because we're not using them right now. And we're going to start out with super movement toggle can always stay on. And same thing with movement. All right, so on super movement toggle, whenever we toggle onto super speed, we disabled the movement FSM. We also want to enable the super speed calculator for right, copy paste, and super speed calculator for left. And then we will reset on exit. So since they were already disabled, when we leave this state, it'll disable them again. All right, and I think that should do what we need. So let's hit play. All right, so if we come over here to just movement, right? So we got our movement script. I guess I'll put this on all the way. All right, we can jump. We can move and jump, right? Boink. Oh, I'd love to try to jump in the back of that truck. That would have been fun. All right, and now if I toggle over so that we can see super movement toggle, and bring this back up. So now, if here's my hands, okay, moving slow. Now if I toggle super speed, why can I still move? Let's try that again. Toggle. All right, joystick's not working. So you see it kind of gave me a speed boost right out of the gate. But now I'm stopped moving because my hands aren't moving. But now if I start moving my hands, now I'm back into super speed. All right. So let's go ahead and maximize this so you can get full enjoyment. Okay. So here we are. I can't jump anymore because I haven't set that up for the super speed yet. But if I want to toggle, now I'm back to walking and jumping, and then toggle again. Toggle. There we go. And super speed. Yeah, woo! I can go faster. But if I don't go all the way up and down, I'm not going to go as fast as I could potentially. All right. So one thing that stinks though, if I'm standing up and doing that, that kind of works. Adding a snap turn would also be useful. But I think for now, that should be enough. All right, so what we'll do next time is we're going to take a look at adding a snap turn so you can do those cool 90-degree turns like you'll see the Flash do on the CW. But in real life, if you just move your body pretty quick, it still works too for me playing it. And then we're going to also add some fancy particle effects as well. All right, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you know when I do my next tutorial episode. Don't forget to put some comments in there. You can start commenting on some things you think I could do to improve the look and feel of the Speedster. Also, if you have suggestions for other types of movements I should try or other superpowers we should tackle once we get out of the movement phase. Long-term goal, I'm going to make this multiplayer to play around in, so look out for that here in a month or so. And also don't forget to take a look at the game jam I'm hosting. So I'll put the link in the description. It's my birthday game jam that goes until February 10th. So be sure to check that out. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.